What year did you start with the department? When did you apply?
1968.
And did your recruit class start in 68 too?
Yes.
So, do you recall, were you the first woman who applied, who got into the department?
Well, I was the first female police officer. As I say, a whole big pile of women applied, including Lucille. Lucille and I, well, she was internal at that time. She was a secretary at La Hawai'i Station. And she came in and she applied for the policewoman position the same time I did. So I got chosen.
What made that year special for women to apply to the department? Or had they applied previously and just not gotten in?
No, they had an opening for policewoman, that category. And it wasn't a female police officer, it was for policewoman position.
How did it differ?
Well, the EEOC had not, well, I guess they were just, I guess, trying to even out because of EEOC guidelines. I believe the department and the county probably, created that position simply because, for one thing, it was needed. The second thing was in order to, I guess, meet fair labor standards, I would guess.
Gotcha. So what was it like applying, and what was it like going through recruit school back then?
Well, I can tell you that when we took the entrance exam, the entire classroom at Halinani was completely full of women applicants.
Wow.
And in fact, Lucille sat about 2 or 3 seats away from me when we were taking the entrance exam.
So were you the only woman selected, or were there others at the same time?
No, only one position was open.
And you got it?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So they didn't maintain a reserve list or anything?
No, not that I know of.
So they created one single female position?
Yes. And without rancor, I'm saying that they met the federal standards. And I believe that's why the position was created.
Wow. How long did it take for additional women to join the department?
I would say probably I can't tell you exactly, but I would say maybe another 5 to 7 years before Ann Mejia or Ann Gamayo applied, and she became the first uniformed female officer.
So you weren't in uniform?
No, that's how I dressed to work.
In a dress?
Civilian, in a dress and heels and nylon stockings.
In the Hawaiian heat?
Yes.
And so what did you do? What did your duties entail those first few years?
At that time, what happened was we had the Detective Bureau, and the detectives, at that time we had just the investigators, and we had a Juvenile Aid Bureau which was attached to the Detective Bureau. And there was one sergeant there, Sergeant Richard Rickard, and I joined him in the Juvenile Aid Bureau when I was hired. Wow. And together we worked, cases anything involving juveniles.
And back in that day, it would also have included domestic abuse, everything that juvenile aid covers today as well?
No.
Just
juveniles.
Huh.
And the domestics, I only went out if patrol was having a hard time with a particular case or something. And then I would go out. I mainly worked out of the office and responded to cases involving juveniles, which would mean I pretty much went to every school on this island. It was island-wide that I worked.
Wow. So what was it like traveling to those different schools and working with kids back in that time?
That's great. It was great because for one thing, it was kind of a nice thing because the advantage that I had was that I was the first. And the kids, I think some of the kids used to get into trouble just because I could come to the school and talk to them. And, you know, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the entire time because it was doing what I like to do, which is help kids, basically.
What made you want to become a police officer?
Well, I grew up on Oahu. I was born and raised on Oahu, and my parents had a lot of police officer friends. And, you know, over the years, they introduced me to the female officers that they had. And one of my great role models absolutely was Lucille Abreu and also Bertha Nahopi. And they were both police women that were part of the Policewoman's, I guess, unit that was attached to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Unit
Over on Oahu.
on Oahu.
Now, were they uniformed officers?
No.
So
Plainclothes.
basically, female officers throughout Hawaii were then plainclothes.
The only female police officers were on Oahu before I became a female officer here.
That's just so crazy that even different terms and everything. So walk me through your career, because you wound up over time becoming the first female police major in the history of the department. So were you also the first captain and the first lieutenant, I
Yes.
would presume?
Yes.
So what was that like?
I guess it was okay. I never really thought about it because there was just too much to do. There was just too much work to do, and it was certainly an honor getting to be the first to get promoted to those positions. But by the same token, you know, I have all my coworkers and the Bertha Nahopi and Lucy Abreu on Oahu to thank for, you know, their guidance and everything. So what I was a testimony to their skills at you know, helping others to become people who help others.
So by the time you became a sergeant, you were in uniform?
No, I never wore a uniform until I became a lieutenant and went to South Hilo Patrol.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, try running on stone walls in high heels with stockings. It's a treat, let me tell you.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was really funny because I used to chase kids, runaways, on, you know, those Menehune rock walls that everybody builds around their block. I used to chase kids who were runaways in my litigator shoes, high heels, and my dresses on these walls.
Was it
when they
difficult
used to
for
run
the
away.
department to adapt to a female lieutenant and a female captain and a female major?
I think that the biggest hurdle was becoming just the first female to join the ranks of police officers on this island. There were a few isolated incidences where, you know, people resented, I guess, me as a police officer, but I didn't dwell on it because it didn't make any difference, because everybody else, I mean, everybody's in there and we're all working toward the same goal, which is to make, you know, a safe place to live. So I didn't think about it because sometimes you just get a little too bogged down if you start thinking about that too much.
Yeah, and just focused on the work and
Yes.
stuff. Where were you stationed when, first you were in Hilo,
Yes.
were you, and you drove around with your job in juvenile aid, where were you assigned as you worked your way up the ranks?
Well, I was a sergeant still in juvenile, and I later became a lieutenant in juvenile, and I worked every single district when they had sex assault cases in particular, or difficult child abuse or neglect cases. And didn't really go to the country until I was a captain. And I was a captain in Lapoihoi in North Hilo. And that's where Lucille Chung, who had taken the test at the same time I did, right? It was the police reporter out there. So she and I worked together for years and years, and we still are like sisters, even after we retired. But I went to North Hilo, and then they called me, then Deputy Chief Francis D. Morales, called me one day and said, do you want to go to Honokoff for a little while? Because the captain was retiring. So I said, okay. So I went there. I spent about a week there, and then he says, you know what, do you want to go to Puno? So I said, sure. So I ended up in Puno. And
now what years was this?
okay, that's going to be a test to my brain there, because I can't remember.
70s, later 70s, 80s?
Probably the 80s, probably in the 80s.
That must have been rather entertaining on many different levels.
Yes. No, but it was, when every single district, when you get to know the people who live there, the residents, everybody has a different concept of what their district is, or how they live, and things like that. And every district was a challenge, but it was a welcome challenge, because it turned out to be so pleasant. I mean, I never, to my recollection, ever felt that I didn't want to be in someplace, wherever I was sent. And it was great, because it was a new adventure, and you meet different people, you learn things, and we should never stop learning. So I enjoyed every place I was.
And how long were you stationed in Puna?
Only for 9 months.
Oh, okay. And then where you assigned?
I believe I came into Hilo to be major.
Wow. So what was that like when you applied and got major?
To tell you the truth, all it meant was that you worked with more people. To me, it didn't make any difference what I was, because everybody's in this together, and everybody just worked together. So, you have more responsibility, but when you have good people, that's not a concern. And I can honestly say that, with one or two exceptions, never ever had bad people to work with. Never. Everybody did their job.
Now, when did you retire? How long were you in the department?
1994, I had 27 years.
We have pictures of officers in brown uniforms. I've heard rumors that we had green uniforms, and of course now we have blue uniforms. Do you recall, were there ever green uniforms, or is this just a myth?
I believe that there were green uniforms before I joined the police department, and that would have been way early, like in the 40s maybe. And then I believe that sometime during the 50s they changed to the brown uniform. And when I finally put on a uniform as a lieutenant, it was blue.
And I've read that pistol range and training facility was built up in Halinani.
Yes.
And I think that's the photo that you're holding there.
Yes.
What can you tell me about that?
Well, the pistol range was, or Halinani, I think they call it the police academy at that time. That was there, and it was old when I joined the police department. And we did all of our gun training down at that, firearms training down at that range. Whenever there was a party or a big class of any kind, those were all held in the 2 buildings or 3 buildings at Halinani as well. And so that was a place of wonderful memories and a lot of laughs too, especially pistol at the pistol range, about how some of us couldn't hit the side of a barn, you know, but that was where we learned. And our firearms instructor at that time was Inspector Charles Martin, and he was a great guy. Halinani was just a great place, and it was all of us in those days who went up there have great memories of that.
Now there's another picture there, you're playing softball, I think it is. It looks like you're playing softball.
No, actually, what I'm doing is I'm holding a smoke grenade or a tear gas grenade, and this was at Halinani, and this area here
That's a smoke grenade?
Yeah, smoke grenade or a tear gas grenade. Inspector Martin used to make sure that we did everything, and it was actually a lot of fun to be trained by him, because you learned something good, and you also enjoyed doing it. And that corresponds to the pistol range here, this long building.
Okay.
Inspector Martin made very sure that we were all capable of doing that, or we were equipped enough to do that, you know.
Did the department use that often?
No, but we had to be prepared.
Case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was just part of training, just like firearms training. I mean, we didn't. I think I pulled my gun once, but that was it.
But you still have to be prepared, because you never know.
Yeah.
But that seems, for having such a long career, that's not a lot of times to have to draw your weapon as opposed to today. You know, I would think that, you know, officers need to draw them a lot more often.
It's a different world now. It's not the same.
So when you look back on your career, what are some of your highlights?
I would say that the thing that I remember most about being a police officer was the fact that I became an officer because I wanted to help people. And a lot of times people, especially now in this age, people don't often think of police officers as really helpers, but as more enforcers. And in the old days, Hilo was like, or the Big Island was just, you know, a big happy family most of the time. And when people had problems, they actually would call the police to see if we would come and mediate or help them out, or, you know, give them some advice. So basically, I spent my career doing just that, and I was assigned all of the sex assault cases, generally. So I went from district to district in the very beginning to handle all of those cases, as far as the initial interviews and any evidence collection or follow-up interviews and things like that with the females. And I always had a great sense of satisfaction in the fact that knowing that these women or these girls would, or boys, would come through these horrible instances in their lives, and they could go forward. I have, in fact, one of my victims who was really a victim of a very vicious attack in the 70s. And to this day, we are in touch at least once a month.
Oh,
And she's no longer here, she lives elsewhere. But that to me meant more than anything, because when I was growing up, we always looked at police officers as not enforcers, but people who actually help people. And I felt honored to be given the opportunity to give back for what I had received all of those years leading up to my time in the police department. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
But that for me, that gives me great satisfaction in knowing that maybe somebody's a little better off today because I helped. And you know, for me, what it is it's a testament to the fact that if anybody does what they're supposed to do and completes their tasks, you know, as well as they can, there's always a chance that no matter whether you're male or female, that you're going to get a hit. And to me, it wasn't really a matter of getting a hit in the sense that, you know, you're making more money or you have more power or things like that. What it was you keep rising, and the higher you go, the more you can do, because there are more people under you to do that for. And if it weren't for all of those people below you, so to speak, you would not be where you are. And that's what I always felt. You know, people helped me when I was growing up because I had a tough childhood, but you know, I hope that somebody can say someday that I helped them because, you know, they had a tough childhood.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. That's a pretty good note to end on.
Thank you.
Thank you.